Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live with a triggered ability on the stack. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. We've got a fun episode ahead of us today. We've got the Azerbaijan Grand Prix preview. We've got some League of Legends roster swaps and just conversation heading into the upcoming season. And, of course, we've got some Magic the Gathering. Thank you all for finding your way back here because, Justin, remember, not all who wander are lost. I saw that on a bumper sticker today, and it just made me kind of like, I don't know, on my drive home today, I was just thinking about bumper stickers, and I don't understand why people would put a ton on their car. I feel like there's very few people that have like one bumper sticker. It's either like all or nothing, where their entire back windshield is impossible to see out of, or nothing at all. Any bumper sticker thoughts?
I remember my boss at one of my old gigs. We were behind I guess it was like a Subaru, like Shaggin Wagon, and the whole back was covered in bumper stickers. Some of them political, some of them social, some of them funny, some of them cartoons. And his takeaway from that was he was imagining this person must have a lot to talk about, must be interested in so many things. And he was referring to this person that he had no clue who they were, with a lot of reverence. And I'm not sure I feel the same way about bumper stickers. I don't know. It seems like a good way to support something. Yeah. But often I don't mind supporting. I hate a sticker. They don't come off. You got to use alcohol. They're like, the feeling of something stuck to my fingers is just the worst thing in the world. So it's a sticker. So I'm off it.
Yeah, I have a similar kind of opinion. I'm not a big fan of them in general. I think like there's differences between getting like a nice like I have a little emblem for the Marine Corps on the back of my car. It's a metal emblem that I got that has like sticks on and everything for my cousin and in his memory and all. And so that's like, it looks nice. It doesn't like stand out as this just like, I don't know, high school binder front cover page or something like that.
Right.
And so I hadn't thought of it the way that like your old boss did. And I think that that's interesting that someone has like been to all these places, does all these things, whatever. But no one's going to like look at the back of your car typically and be like, oh my God, you were in Key West? Like that mile zero bumper sticker just really like, I love that. And so
like getting flagged down on a highway, like, I love your bumper stickers.
Yeah. Like I don't quite get it. And I was just the bumper sticker, or one of the number of bumper stickers on the back said not all who wander are lost, with a nice little compass in it. And I was just like, all right, sounds good.
That's likely their way of justifying having multiple major changes in college, the trip to Cancun, and then to Europe that they didn't have to pay for. It's ideas like that help them justify their behavior.
Yeah, it definitely has been an Instagram post caption for them at some point, but
with next to some blue ass water.
Oh, all the blue ass water, man. Sure. But I just was curious your thoughts. It was rolling around in my head. I thought it would be an interesting way to start off the episode. But we can kind of get into the regularly scheduled program with the Rose, Thorn, and Seed. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. Before I do the Rose Thorn and Seed, I just want to give a quick shout out to existing listeners and any new listeners coming on board. On the Discord, I've changed some things around, made it a little more friendlier, made it a little more easy to onboard, I guess you could say. So there's some changes to the Discord. Come join us there if you want to get involved. And then also all of our socials are in the link tree that's in the description below. But other than that, let's get into the Rose, Thorn, and Seed. My rose for the week. So a lot of my stuff this week's going to center around Magic. But me and Sarah have gotten in a couple of really solid sessions of games. Not playing with the like big commander decks that we had done a little bit. 1 versus 1 100 card singleton. It never produced the most exciting games or the games that we really wanted. So we tried using the smaller 60 card decks with 15 card sideboards, and that has produced a couple of really fun evenings. And I think that's in part to kind of setting up expectations, and then also I think she's a very competitive person overall, and I think she feels bad when the results like influence how we're feeling in any given moment. So I think she would rather avoid a competitive thing rather than have us like,
Yeah.
tit for tatting, I guess you could say. But with some of the work she's been doing recently, it has helped her just be in the moment, have fun, and enjoy it. So that's been really cool. A couple of really fun Magic sessions with Sarah.
Is
My
that
Thorn, go ahead.
well? Is that 60 card format? Is it a 60 card commander format, or is it a like
Just regular
just
standard
standard?
kitchen table Magic. So you
Gotcha.
have like 24 lands, 36 spells. You can have up to 4 of any one spell.
Cool. Very
Yeah.
nice.
So that's been fun. My thorn for the week, I have developed a dark chocolate addiction in all of my like I've cut so many things out, and in my head the one thing that I was like, "Oh, this seems like a reasonable place to get sugar from is dark chocolate." So obviously, we've got like cashews covered in chocolate. We've got this like granola thing that's got some dark chocolate in it. So I probably eat more dark chocolate than I should, but this is me saying it out loud and realizing it. So that's been a little bit of a thorn, but it is so tasty of a thorn. So one can't complain.
And not the most unhealthy of chocolates. It's probably the healthiest of chocolates that you could
Yeah, and
have.
it's
Like,
not got like any fillings in it. It's not strawberries or nothing. So I do feel pretty good about it overall.
not too
And then
bad.
my seed for the week, I'm just gonna shout these guys out because it was really fun, and I honestly feel like I learned a lot. Anthony Fantano had on Andrew Callahan of Channel 5 News. They did like a conversation podcast together.
Nice.
And overall, it was super interesting to learn about like just his ideas of where he comes from, but to make this concise, he talked about being just like ultimately helped by an individual in the movie making community, and he showed great gratitude for this individual. And it wasn't the gratitude and it wasn't the help, but it made me realize that like breaking into that world, it feels so close because like to a certain degree, he was just somebody who picked up a camera, had a little bit of a background in the thing, and just kept on working and then got to that point. And listening to that conversation, hearing them talk, it really made me feel like, and I know I've said this before, but it really made me feel like we are in the right place at the right time, doing exactly the right thing, and like moving in the right directions. Him saying that, I was like, I feel like that could be us in, X amount of time or whatever. So I thought that was just illuminating, enlightening. I love the conversation, so that was really fun. But just that seed of an idea where it's like, you I could say so many things in this scenario, but just the perseverance of that individual, I think, shows, and it was very cool.
Yeah, I mean, opportunities don't come to people who aren't actively seeking them out typically. Like if you're
Right.
if you're putting yourself out there and doing the work, like no one's gonna be like, hey, do you want to do a podcast on a large platform or something, to people who don't have a podcast typically, unless they're
Right.
already a big name of some sort and all. So I love doing this. I love just continuing to do this, and so yeah, you never know what could happen, and
Exactly.
what could turn into something greater. So
Exactly.
yeah, very cool. Well, I will get into my Rose, Thorn, and Seed for this week as well.
Go for it.
So for my Rose, I did follow up on my Seed from last week. I did go after some of these fitness goals. I really looked at the gym every time I walked past it. It was great.
Nice.
It was. I got in 2 workouts in the gym this past week, along with couple of days over the weekend of one of a hike, and then the other kind of some longer walking around of like a couple hours of walking each time, just getting some steps in and getting active a little bit, and everything. So I accomplished really what I was looking to do, now that I felt like I was kind of back closer to 100% with things. So that is, I'm happy about it, and so that's definitely a good Rose for me this week.
Oh yeah.
For my Seed, I'll get into my this weekend. I'm going to an engagement party for a couple of my friends up in New York City, so I'm looking forward to visiting them. It's going to have a bunch of college friends that I haven't seen in a while, so it'll be nice kind of just catching up with people, getting to celebrate their engagement and all. And then my Thorn for this week is just that it's been a pretty rough week, mostly work related, but I had basically for our entire property, we have RFID key fobs that give people access to their apartments, and for some reason, I don't know the rhyme or reason or anything, but just about all 250 apartments, their fobs were expiring yesterday, today, and tomorrow. We had a bunch of people come in to the office like, hey, my key fob's not working to get into my apartment. We're like, oh, okay. And after like the 5th one or so, I was like, this is not normal. So I pulled some reports from the system, and it was just like a giant list saying everyone's key fobs are going to stop working over the next 3 days. And I think
How long do they typically last for?
you can typically, ours would last for the system was set up to have them last for a year.
Gotcha.
I have pushed that out to make it longer because, I mean, some people stay longer than a year. You shouldn't have to necessarily redo your key fob. And since you have to scan them with the system to rekey them and extend it, you can't just like type in a number in the system. We basically have had to have everyone from the property come in at some point, or have them plan to come in while we're around and everything. We've had to extend hours in the office and everything to allow people who are getting home later than the office closes to be able to come in and do it. And then on top of that, we had a situation with one of my staff today where we had to let them go over some not too exciting stuff to deal with and everything. So that's why I was caught up late at work and everything. It was a not very fun situation and everything. And just on top of all of that, yesterday I just did not play very well at basketball. So it's just like, it's a rough week. I'm working through it and all, but looking forward to the weekend, like I said. So I'm trying not to let it bog me down too bad.
Hell yeah. And honestly, just remember that not all who wander are lost. Honestly, you can just rest your laurels on that.
Did you come up with that? That's a nice
No,
saying.
I'm pretty sure I read it on a bumper sticker, actually.
Nice, very cool. But that's my rose, thorn, and seed for this week. Looking forward to getting into talking about Azerbaijan and Baku. I believe I always have trouble pronouncing it properly, but I believe it's Baku. So just a couple of notes. One that I think is big and kind of leads into a little more deeper conversation with the Red Bull team and everything is that Max has had some bad shakes of luck over the past 4 races at Baku. We've had him DNF in 2017 due to engine troubles. In 2018, he and Danny Ricciardo collided. In 2019, he finished P4, but with some craziness and everything going on. And then in 2021, he had the tire blowout going down the main straight at, I don't know, like 180 miles an hour or whatever it was. And so he is one of many that have had some different issues there at the circuit and everything. There's a lot of different things that I guess have made it a very interesting race. And so, in my opinion, it is one of the more exciting racetracks because there always is some of this chaoticness that goes on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is a street circuit, so it's more difficult. Obviously, you have the castle section, which everybody talks about, which is, that little, tight left turn, and then the uphill, what is that? Like a little serpentine
like
design?
a little S turn kind of thing where you go, sharp 90-degree left uphill through the castle section, and then a very sharp right immediately after. So pretty slow corners through there. Also, turns 1 and 2 have had a ton of craziness over the past few races. I went back and watched highlights from those 4 races that I talked about with Max, which are the last 4. And so turn 1, I think, is where everyone expects there to be a lot of trouble because at the race starts, we've had a lot of collisions because it's a sharp left turn, a very short distance from the starting line, so it doesn't leave a lot of room for the cars to get spaced out enough to really be spaced out going through that. Like there's typically, especially at the beginning, 2 to 3 cars that are going 2 to 3 cars wide around that corner. And so we've seen lots of issues there. We saw Lewis with his, he had pressed the magic button on his steering wheel that shifted his brake balance last year, which caused him to not be able to stop, go into the runoff section on the restart at the end of the race. We've seen tons and tons of collisions between teammates, between anyone and everyone. We've had people get punctures and have to try and make it all the way around the rest of the lap to get back to the pit lane on lap 1. But I think turn 2 is the turn that is more concerning to me, just because you do really get going a bit quicker on the straight leading into it, and then due to that, you are just in a position where a lot of people try to dive up the inside, late brake, and get that inside on the left-hander, which has caused a number of collisions with people locking up their brakes and sliding into each other, people going wide. It's just been those two turns right at the start have caused a lot of chaos over the past few years, at least.
Well, and then that has shaken up the the podiums as well because of all the safety cars cleanups and whatnot. Like last year, I know we had it was Checo taking the lead after Max had the tire blowout, and then it was Seb and Pierre on the podium. Correct?
Yeah. So sorry for. Let me pull it up for last year. Yeah. So it was Sergio, Seb, and Pierre.
Hmm.
Um, and then in yeah, it's been some odd ones. Back in 2019, it was Valtteri, Lewis, and then Seb. So Seb's had some good performances there.
Okay.
Uh, 2018 was another odd one, if I remember correctly. It was so it was Lewis, Kimi Räikkönen for Ferrari, and Sergio Perez in the Force India.
Oh wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, we've had, and then I think there was someone who was odd from 2017 too. I thought, oh yeah, Lance Stroll in the Williams got P3. It was Ricardo, Bottas, Stroll. So
Wow, that's a weird podium.
very, very interesting podium. But just in general, it really has made for some interesting races and exciting races. One driver who I'm curious to just keep an eye on is Esteban Ocon, because he had incidents in both 2017 and 2018 of him colliding with his teammate, colliding with other drivers, and bringing out safety cars and whatnot. So he doesn't have a phenomenal track record but he also doesn't have. I believe those are his only two races racing there.
Gotcha.
So not a ton of experience on the circuit either. So I'm curious now, as he's like back in and everything over the past couple years, how he's going to kind of shake out this weekend.
With the what was it? Double contact with Lewis, not this past weekend, but the previous race at Monaco. Was it double contact or just the single? I guess it was maybe from like a qualifying, not a qualifying, maybe a practice session and then the race. But I know he took the one contact with Lewis. So maybe you can extend the conversation out to maybe he just struggles on street tracks where there's walls around him, tighter turns, a lot more 90-degree turns tend to be on street circuits.
Yeah.
Curious if he just struggles in general there. So yeah, that's a good point to see how Ocon does in
Yeah,
particular.
it's something that I'm curious to see, because there's a lot of a lot of good drivers on the grid, but there's just a lot of chaos that can happen, and so Ocon is definitely one of those who's just along with Max, has had their fair share of issues at this circuit and everything.
Hmm.
So hopefully we get some good clean racing, because the track does offer a lot of good opportunities for overtakes, including some of those turns that I was talking about, turn 1 and turn 2, that provide those opportunities as long as things stay clean. So that's kind of just something that will be interesting to keep an eye on. I did lead into this with just the conversation, of course, coming up again with Checo and Max regarding the team and kind of how things are shaking out. I mean, we've had Christian Horner this past week come out and make a statement to the press, basically saying that they do not care which one of their drivers would win the drivers' championship. Like, they're concerned about team championship. They're concerned about one of their drivers winning the drivers' championship. But he came out and did the, correct and diplomatic thing of just being like, hey, I want to squash this. Like, we're not trying to play favorites with anyone. Whoever's the lead driver is getting priority, like the normal things that are going on amongst teams and everything. Like, driver who's in the lead is getting the first pit opportunity and like things like that. And so I think that's just the best way to handle it and everything. Because both of them have driven very well. Max has had a little bit of worse luck overall, so Checo is just has been able to keep up really well in the points and everything by being consistent and having some really good finishes when Max has had rough times. So I guess we'll kind of see how that shakes out and see if there ends up being any tension between the two drivers.
Hopefully they have set up a culture between the two drivers and the two engineering squads that they really are in it for the team effort and look to maximize potential there. Because if you get towards the end of the season and you have two Red Bull drivers being too aggressive, like late in the game, that's not where you want to be. So I do think you have to set expectations early and just say, hey, this is going to be a team effort. Who's ever in the lead is, going to get the, whatever happens with a lead driver. And then, the saying a driver has priority doesn't mean that driver 2 no longer gets radio messages. It's not like he no longer gets tires or anything like this. So I think in modern Formula One, these teams can run their drivers to a closer margin than maybe they have been before. And do you think that's where this conversation comes from of like taking priority and like who do we care about more? Like, are you fixing a championship for this guy? I truly just don't believe these competitive organizations think like this.
I think that the reason that people get this connotation about teams is that there are teams that have had dominant drivers who have taken cars better than their teammates, that have kind of forced it into just the natural seat 1, seat 2 kind of progression and everything. It can be kind of more rare when teammates are extremely close in competition and everything. I mean, Lewis, although Valtteri had some really great performances for Mercedes and everything, Lewis consistently was beating him, winning the world championships and drivers championships and all. Max, when he was with Pierre and then when he was with Alex Albon, of course Red Bull made Max their priority guy because they were able to tailor their car better to a driver that they knew was going to be there for multiple years, as opposed to the new guy that they're trying out to just on a 1-year contract to just see how this guy does and all. Like, of course they're not planning the future of their organization and their cars and everything on this guy that are like, we'll give him a shot. Like, that's not the reasonable or competitive, or I guess like most competitive way to do that. Like, you have to target maximum points, and if one guy is getting them consistently, you're going to prioritize that person. So I think that just due to especially Red Bull and Mercedes both being in kind of the lead and the spotlight and everything over the past few years, that we're in a position where a lot of people who are viewing, a lot of people who are looking at it kind of have this predisposition to go seat 1, seat 2, like, if this guy's doing better, so anytime he gets the right call, it's because he's the first driver on the team and the other guys just like can kick rocks, and it's not it shouldn't be like that in my opinion. So,
and it doesn't seem like that strategy is compatible with, sure, that makes sense in the example that you gave with Max and Pierre, where like, obviously that's not where the focus of the team is. They're like running a different strategy that year. But when you're talking about a team who has two drivers and two drivers in contention and a vehicle in contention, like I said, I just don't think it matches up. or is an interesting way to analyze the scenario. It's making these team principals out to be almost like gym coaches in that scenario, like just like picking their favorite quarterback or whatever. I just don't think it works like that. So I think what we will continue to see is, like you were alluding to, Checo being an incredibly solid teammate, and like you were saying, has been there most of the times that Max dropped the ball. Carlos was not Carlos. Checo was right there to pick it back up.
Yeah.
So I think moving forward, we're just going to see way more teamwork and synergy develop more than we're going to see a wedge between the two drivers develop. Like, and also, I just don't think they're the personality for that either. Like, they don't see. They just want to. They just want to win, and winning is not like, you know, playing favorites.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like we've seen it. Like Checo has done things to help Max, like immensely, and then like Max hasn't been in that position too frequently to do the same.
Right.
But he's always been very happy for Checo, congratulatory, like excited for him and all. And I think we saw from the Red Bull perspective, yeah, in Spain when Max was coming from behind with on a much faster lap pace and everything, they were like, okay, Checo, like move out of the way. Checo not getting that opportunity to go through with Max like we had talked about, I think was probably a possibility of them both losing time by slowing each other down and everything, squabbling over that position as opposed to just driving and waiting for Max and George to pit and everything, like
Right.
what ended up happening. Because then we see in Monaco, Checo obviously, like, he was the lead car the entire weekend. Like, yeah, Red Bull had him on the primary strategy and everything. They had him coming in. They double stacked Max on the pit stop. So Max ended up getting a slower pit stop and more like time at standstill because of the double stack and everything. And so like they clearly, in my opinion, are not playing favorites. It's just that Max has been the lead driver the majority of the time, and like, but they'll take it one race at a time. Checo's had some awesome performance on the opposite of Max's struggles at Baku. Checo's been on the podium. Like, I think I mentioned him twice in the past 4 races, where he's had some great performances. He took P1 last year, and then I think 3 years ago he was third on the podium. So it's like he's got great performances. He drives well on street circuits. He could very easily have a phenomenal weekend here as well. So.
Yeah, I think so, and he just continues to level up, every time we watch him. And yeah, I just don't think the squabbling teammates is going to be the thing that happens here. I know another one of the questions that you had going into this weekend is, when does Lewis get back into winning form, and does the consistency from Russell paint maybe a different picture than what's might be going on in the team?
Yeah, I mean, George has performed phenomenally. I think he's he is another one of those guys that I would look at and say they're a generational talent. I guess when there's like 4 guys that you would consider between Max, Lewis, Charles, and George, I don't know if you consider that generational, but like just very, very phenomenally talented drivers out there, along with everyone else is very good, but they kind of stand above. And so, like, I know Lewis has had his struggles and all, but he did kind of put out there that he's looking to be competing for wins by the time that Mercedes gets to Silverstone. He has won 8 out of his 15 races at Silverstone in F1, which is just he's won more than 50% of the time that he's raced there in his career, which is just an unreal stat. I don't know any other stat like that would compare like that, especially over 15 races there. And so I think that Mercedes has made some good progress. George was able to adapt well to the difficult to drive car early on, but I think we'll see Lewis kind of continue to come back to form, and really he does really want to be able to be competitive, hopefully by that race in Silverstone, which I guess would be, I've got to see when that is coming up, but I think it's just a few weeks down the road. So in the first weekend of July will be at Silverstone. So that's not so that's two races and so Baku, the Canadian Grand Prix, and then Silverstone. So.
And that's going to be an interesting one because not only is that home turf for Lewis, but that'll be home turf for George as well, both from Great Britain. So that'll be interesting. And yeah, I imagine the pressure's on for Lewis to want to be able to perform at pretty winning track there for him. A 50% win rate is really solid.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty unbelievable, and it makes sense that he would want to be able to compete at his home race. It's always a very big and exciting race for him. When he won last year at Silverstone, he was very animated, very excited, and everything about that, and everything. Like it's an exciting thing, and so it would be very cool to see both Mercedes cars, since they are both British drivers, competing up there to have a shot. The crowd would, I'm sure, will be electric, supporting them and everything. It will be a really exciting race, hopefully. So that's kind of the timeline it looks like that Lewis is trying to put out there, in terms of just getting Mercedes kind of back on track and at a point where they can compete for some race wins.
Yeah, I'm worried that they would be, if it doesn't happen soon, like by the time we get to Silverstone, I'm worried that they would be out of it for really any hope of competing for either, and we may already be in that territory. It's tough to tell. But if some of the other constructors just keep on ramping up, then yeah, it may be tough. But another leading it, well, it wouldn't be talking about Azerbaijan because he's not from there, but I was just going to say another driver that would be wanting to perform well at the Silverstone race, moving on to talking about McLaren, would be Lando Norris.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a home race for him as well. McLaren has had their share of struggles and everything this season, but I mean, Lando has been able to have some pretty good performances throughout the season. He's been able to pick up and kind of get the most performance he could out of the car. He was able to get points in 5 out of the 7 races so far, and 5 out of 6 where there was 1 DNF. So, I mean, P6 in Monaco, I think the opportunity is there for McLaren to have a good race as well, just with Baku being... So I was reading a little bit about it because there are kind of 2 general strategies that you can go with in terms of the racetrack. You can go with higher downforce so that you're better able to maneuver and take turns and everything. And even though there is the very long 2-kilometer back straight that comes down, that is a little bit... it's something that you'll see probably... Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, because they have the better engines typically, or better suited cars for those long straights, going with more downforce, which will give them less straight line speed, so bigger downforce from a larger rear wing. whereas some of the midfield teams and kind of back of the pack teams can go with the lower downforce for the higher straight line speed, look to be able to get more overtaking done on those long stretches, but will have to be a little bit more tentative on the turns and through the more difficult sections of the track. So I think with McLaren in the position that they're in, getting a good qualifying performance, if you go with the higher downforce and everything, is a very good, or with the lower downforce is very good option, because you'll have just the 1 lap time. I think you'll have a good shot at putting in a good time. And with a street circuit, if you put yourself in good position at the start, you are setting yourself up for success typically, in terms of just difficulty passing and everything, even though this is definitely less difficult with that than, say, Monaco. But
right, where someone like Fernando Alonso would be perfectly happy to make his elbows pretty wide.
Yep, just drive a super wide Alpine and just drag it through, slow everyone down.
Now, that's part of the regulations, correct? Is how wide the car can be.
Yeah, that's always
say wide car, where we don't actually mean them like
no, just like a making it difficult for people to get around you, kind of parking your car in the right positions so that if another driver is trying to pass you, they have to go the long way around the outside or kind of get squeezed out one way or another, just putting yourself in a very defensible position. And since Fernando is one of those veteran drivers with a lot of experience, he is able to do that very well, because he's just knows a lot of the ins and outs and tricks of the trade with that veteran status, to be able to defend very, very well. So,
oh yeah, big time. We saw it last time out. Now we were talking about some of the success of these British drivers. That doesn't really talk about the race that we're going to, though. Baku. I want to talk a little bit, kind of staying with the McLaren team. I want to talk a bit about Daniel Ricciardo. I was looking over. I found a pretty good graphic of his career overall, and I have a sense that there is a bit of a nostalgia maybe for Daniel Ricciardo as a driver, because looking with an objective eye, I haven't been watching him that long. When you look in just a concise little picture of the career, it is not as impressive as you may have been led to believe.
So
there are some solid years, but overall finishing like rather mediocre.
Yeah, and well, it's tough, because Daniel Ricciardo was a very, very good driver for Red Bull. And so it kind of becomes a, like, was this a mistake for him to leave Red Bull? I think is more the conversation necessarily, because he sort of left Red Bull. I feel like at least it seems, I don't know for sure, but he and Max were becoming very competitive with one another, to the point that they had multiple incidents of crashing into each other and just not good driving for the team and the constructors, the constructors championship. And so it was, of course, I think a combination of Max trying to prove himself, Daniel not wanting to give up that lead position that he had really earned over the past few years before Max joined the team and all. And so instead of continuing to have these clashes and everything with his teammate, he chose to leave. He chose to go and go after another opportunity. there was a lot up in the air in terms of Red Bull and what their game plan was, because they were planning to stop using the Renault engine. Danny said, I've been driving well with the Renault engine in the Red Bull, so I'm going to go and drive for Renault. And they just weren't able to put a competitive car together for him to be at the top of the grid. Renault struggled a bit. In his second year there, they were more competitive, but by that point, because of the pandemic and everything, he had already signed to go move to McLaren before that second season even started. So I think it kind of leads back to the decision to leave Red Bull, where he was competitive and where that team continued to be competitive, to go for these other teams that had potential, but maybe on both ends, he and the team didn't meet their potential. And I think the nostalgic effect is a bit just due to, one, success at Red Bull and them being a top team still. He is one of the more winning drivers on the grid. He's had, I believe it's 8 race wins now, which is more than I'd say probably 15 guys on the grid, maybe 14, 13 other drivers. And so he has had great performances, like you alluded to, but he's also just a very likable person. And so I think people have a soft spot for him a bit as well, which I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, and it's hard to parse through, especially from somebody like, I think it's a little bit disingenuous to come from like a new fan perspective. Obviously, we've been doing this for a little bit, but it is a little bit like, I don't know how to parse that information when I haven't seen these performances, so I'm trusting the data that I'm just being given by the team principals and the other drivers and
the data's
Will Buxton.
The data's right. I mean, he definitely has not performed as well as he did early in his career.
Right.
But I do think that it's a combination of maybe him having a slight decline in terms of his driving and everything, but not significant, but also just going to teams where he was not able to be as competitive as he was.
Right. Well, and then the other part of that conversation as well is it's an example where it really makes you realize how important the constructor is and how important the vehicle that you have under you is. Because over the course of the season, he may have only been in the races that he wasn't first or second or whatever. He may have only been 10 seconds behind the leader when he finished, but like that is the margin. So yeah, big unfortunate, but I just wanted to bring that up because I had intimations of both sides, and then when I looked at the career and like all of his results, it's like, okay. But you're right, the Red Bull years stand out big time, and then there's like flashes in the pan after that, which is rather unfortunate.
Yeah. I think that also just like brings up additional conversation with which has of course been all over the headlines recently as well. Of course, with McLaren giving Colton Herta the opportunity to test in F1 and everything, or at least they're planning to, alongside with the fact that Alexander Rossi in IndyCar was signed by the Arrow McLaren team, so that has kind of leaned more towards the thought that Colton Herta might get the opportunity in F1 when Daniel's contract runs out. So there's all these questions of what will happen to Daniel Ricciardo, because he has had worse performances and struggles over the past couple of years and everything. And it's tough to look at and kind of say, yeah, this guy is like, I don't necessarily see him leaving F1, but but I do think that there are teams that would take a up and coming, less experienced but exciting potential kind of guy over him at this point.
Right. Yeah,
So
because his finishes have only gotten worse. Like it's not like they're getting better. But if you take if you take a young guy who's quick that you can teach the sport, that you have more potential.
yeah, but Ricardo's he's a huge brand as well, just individually, and will make any team he goes to more likable, pretty much. Just
Sure, and a touch more marketable as well.
so I think that I don't think that we are going to see him out of F1, but I just think that the question of whether he does continue with McLaren after next year and everything is into question. And it really depends a lot on performances over the rest of the course of this season and probably up till the midseason break next year. So.
Well, that is if he, still has a seat. I'm inclined to say you may be surprised. Like I think this may be, I think this may be his last season, whether we believe it or not.
With McLaren or just in general, or
I'm gonna say in general.
I think if he stops is because he doesn't want to continue after the season. I think there's a place for him still. I just think that I think that McLaren, I don't know if they'd be willing to take that huge hit to their budget cap by maintaining his salary along with bringing on another driver to be there. Like that's his contract goes through 2023. If they decide he's not racing and he's still under contract, like they still have to pay him. Like that, and still a substantial amount of money per year.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's like it would just be dead money on their budget, which hurts a lot. The question would be, will the improvements in performance and everything warrant gaining more I
guess I didn't realize his contract was till 23.
Yeah, and so it's till the end of next year, and currently he's on a $17 million per year salary. So, I think this year it's about $15 million. So that's a pretty significant hit to the salary or to the budget cap and everything, especially when teams are talking about trying to stay within the new budget cap regulations. That's 15 Mick Schumacher crashes that they have to take out, where it's $1 million car replacement and everything. So.
Yeah, when you put it that way, geez, oh man.
Like that's a lot. That's the car getting crashed out in like 75% of the races during the year, to the point that it like cannot be repaired. That's a lot. So that's my only hesitation with looking at it that way. But looking at Ricardo just in general this season, he's had 1 points finish. He's been his second highest finish was P12. He hasn't stood out the same way that I was just mentioning with Lando, who has been in the points 5 out of 7 races. So
yeah, and that's the the quintessential teammate comparison, where it's like, man, he is obviously getting a lot more out of the car. And I heard Damon Hill raise an interesting point. Maybe there's something about the generation that was raised on video games and simulators and stuff. Is there something to that where they have an edge over these drivers? Is there something about the car development that they can kind of hone into in a way that's different from the way an experienced driver drives? I thought it was a fascinating point to raise, being that we have so many young guns that seem like they're like seeing the ones and zeros rather than like existing in the matrix. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean it could be because this is kind of the you have that generational break in this grid. I mean,
Yeah.
Ricardo's 32 years old. He's just a little bit older than the two of us. We were kind of like where we are at in terms of that generational and technological shift. Like, my age group is probably one of the last age groups where your baby pictures were on film, that you had to take a film camera, take pictures, take it down to the photo development shop in the strip mall, and you get your pictures back a week later and you have no idea what they look like. Like, the technological advancements that we've had over the past, I mean, like back when I remember being at the roller rink and the only racing simulator you have was one of those junky sit-in like freaking arcade games that you were like that just always seemed impossible to drive.
Yes.
Compared to like some really good F1 games, some phenomenal sim setups and everything. All of the teams having like. Kids these days are growing up and they are naturally inclined to know how to use technology because it's all around them. Whereas some of the older generations, including in F1, where there's guys like Seb Vettel, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Danny Ricciardo on the older half of the grid, who didn't grow up with those same resources readily available.
Yeah, and you just have to wonder what that does to your hardwiring. If there would be something to the phrase in that scenario, like legitimately built different, where you are gaining an advantage just based on the variance and how you grew up. It's an interesting question. I'm sure the actual data would be quite hard to get, but it was just an interesting point.
No,
how many young guys we're seeing perform well. But yeah, continuing on Azerbaijan, we haven't talked about the Ferraris yet. Hopefully in Monaco, we've seen a little bit of confidence building from Carlos Sainz. I know he has just not been happy with some of the results. Obviously, I can't imagine Ferrari is too happy with some of these results, but a tough finish for Leclerc in Monaco after having so many issues there, having the pole, and then not being able to deliver. I'm curious what the morale on Ferrari is like. I'm curious how they've bounced back and are looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah, well, and that brings up an interesting point from so there's a Twitter account that I follow that talks specifically about Ferrari. And this past week, Mattia Binotto was interviewed, and some of his quotes, little snippets, all taken out of context. I have not read all of this interview and everything, so don't burn me at the stake if things don't sound right. But one of the comments was that Ferrari's objective was to be back competitive in 2022, which they have clearly succeeded at. But then he goes on to say, he says, so our objective is to be competitive, not to win the championship. And then continues on after that saying, being competitive is one fact, becoming world champion is another level of task. And so I found that pretty odd personally, as someone who I feel like you and I and a lot of people are of the opinion that Ferrari is right there right now with Red Bull. They've had some different breaks, and some different luck and everything, and some worse strategy, to be honest, in multiple races now that has allowed them to fall behind in the points and everything, and some bad luck with some DNFs and everything. Like, we are early in the season. We're through 7 races. We have 15, 16 to go. I forget if there's if they replaced Russia with a different track yet, but
I think they did. I think it's Australia.
Australia was probably, I think, was already on. But either way, I think 15 or 16 races left, and they're only down 36 points in the constructors' standings. They're by no means out of it, and I think that was a kind of weird group of statements for Mattia to make, because I think they are in a position to compete for the world championship. Like, downplaying everything as if you're like expecting your team to not succeed at the end of the year is just weird for the team who's second in the points by a pretty close margin in the grand scheme of things.
Maybe he's looking at some of the strategy mistakes from a pessimistic point of view, where he's curious if they are messing up some fundamental things. I mean, I'm thinking of the pit miscommunication with Charles. Like, that was a very costly mistake, and those are mistakes that will compound pretty significantly towards the end of the season. So he may just be shedding a critical eye on his own organization and saying, like, look, if we continue to have these type of weekends, our trajectory is not going to be the same as Red Bull's, right? Like, eventually the 2s and the 3s and the 4s and the 5s will not add up to as much as, a 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 3. So from an expectation standpoint, it seems reasonable. To acknowledge the trouble that they're having and maybe downplaying the scenario a little and saying, like, relax, we're not there yet. However, there is something to be said for, like, fake it till you make it. Do teams start to smell blood in the water with a sentiment like that? And I don't even know what that means.
No, and the other side is I don't know if this interview is translated from Italian to English. There's potential for some, like, translation, not errors in translation,
right,
but for things to not come across the same way after they're translated.
But the best we can do is just take it at face value and say, like, what would be the motive of a team principal to speak like this?
Well, and it could be a number of things. They could be looking at how much money they've put into development so far and seeing that they've put in X amount and are continually, like, throughout the season falling slowly further and further behind Red Bull. But also, I mean,
well, hold on there. I don't think it's a development issue at all. Their car seems really strong.
No,
like they're making driver and, like, strategy mistakes.
I mean, in the fact that they may have spent a larger portion of their budget on their development to get their car to where it is now than maybe they think the other teams have. So they're expecting themselves to slow down in their continuing development because they don't have the budget cap, where other teams may have more space to continue to improve the cars. So not that I didn't mean it in that way, that their car has struggled in development thus far, more so that there is a
other
limit,
teams may catch up,
and there is a limit to how much they can continue to do throughout the season.
Right.
But in my opinion, I think that my perspective from if I were in his shoes making those statements and all, I would have said them similarly but different. Like, I think that it's great to say our objective for 2022 was to be back competitive, and we've met that thus far. Like, our original goal was not to win the championship, it was to be fighting for wins. Like, that was perfectly reasonable to say. But I think that it just has this negative connotation of like, when you're saying being competitive is one thing and becoming a world champion is just another level of thing. And I mean, that is a true statement, but I think saying it somewhat more like we've met our goal of becoming competitive, so now we're reaching for our shoot for the stars, kind of like however you want to say it, that they're reaching for their higher goal of competing for that for the world championship, instead of making it seem like, oh, we're doing what we're looking to do, and that's just that might just be too far. Instead of like kind of tempering things that way, being like, yeah, we're on track with our main goals for the season. Now we're targeting our next thing out there, and we might not do it, but we're like going for it. I think that's a lot more optimistic, or like just stronger of a way to say it, like for the team in a like positive and kind of energizing way for the team, to be like, let's get after it, let's go get it kind of thing.
Yeah, definite. That's definitely the positive spin. Let me throw this at you, though. Maybe he's going for my favorite, the long con, so it looks super slick when they just stroll into like a driver's championship or a world championship. He gets the luxury of, in that follow-up interview, being able to say, like, yeah, we weren't even really trying, but I guess the other teams really aren't that good. Like, that would be insane.
It would. It's just it would be insane. I think it would be it would surprise me, because I think that going into the 8th race of the season, where you're very close in competition, I don't know if that's a position to be going for the long con. I think the long con is more of what some of those Mercedes fans I was talking about in the one of the previous episodes, who are like, yeah, maybe Lewis and George are just sandbagging it and intentionally doing bad so that it's going to be even cooler when they come back and win. And it's like,
all for the storyline.
Like, no one does that, my guy. Sorry. Like that would be a more of that long con kind of effect for me, than being like, oh, we're in second place, and if we win, oh, we got them with this.
Right.
So, but you never know.
You never know. They may be comedy geniuses, as well as a team principal.
Very possible. But before we start moving on, were there any other notes you had for F1 this week leading into the Azerbaijan Grand Prix?
Some like less important things. The only thing we kind of commented on a little bit, I just want to say, keeping an eye out for Seb Vettel this weekend as well. I think the Aston Martin is, it's mid right now, and based on some of his success here in the past, we may see something funky come out of Seb.
Yeah, I mean, he's had good success here. He knows how to race it. Like I said, talking about Alonso, he's another veteran driver who knows how to put his car in the right spots and all. And on a track like this, that can be a huge, huge difference maker. So I think he is definitely someone to keep an eye out for, to have a sneaky good weekend.
Yeah, big time. But that was the other note that I had. If you want to talk about some roster swaps and some of the upcoming matches that we have coming for League of Legends.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that, of course, we have coming up, the LPL summer season does start coming up. I believe you said it was this weekend, starting June 10th. So starting on Friday, we'll have our first games for the LPL and everything. So we'll get to see EDG, FPX, IG, Weibo Gaming, and a few of the other top of the table teams playing in the first couple games this week. So getting into LPL in general. One big note leading into the season or into the split in the summer is RNG, who just won MSI, decided, you know what, being the best isn't good enough, and so they have brought Breathe on as their top laner now, as opposed to Bin, who I think we both thought had some really good performances. So I think that's an interesting good performances at MSI. So I think that's an interesting roster swap to make, and I think that they are kind of really getting after it. Like, that could be they could look really amazing if it works and they rise to the top, but they could also, that could just end up very poorly if he's not able to perform as well. And so Breathe is coming from previously playing
Billy Gaming.
Yep, which is where Bin has now gone to.
Yeah, they effectively traded. Interesting trajectory for Breathe. He was on OMG for the early stages of his career, then played for World Elite, Billy Gaming, and now RNG. So he's a player that has been on like top pedigree teams. So to be fair, I don't know a whole lot about him just by like name recognition. However, based on the pedigree of teams that he's played for and where he's going now, I'm kind of expecting big things, especially it being Bin that they're effectively trading. I don't know if there was like any money added on either side for value or whatever. But I think Bin had a really, really good MSI tournament. He was competitive with most of the other top laners there, and if not getting the better of them in most of the matchups. So yeah, very curious that they were keen on getting rid of Bin, because I think a lot of people would say he was part of the RNG magic. However, yeah, Xiaohu and Wei were just as integral. So yeah, we'll see what they can do.
Yeah, and I mean, we with him going to Billy, they are still a playoff contending team in the LPL. Yeah. They were eighth, but they were only two wins off of being tied for third in that tightly contended third through sixth slot. They were just outside of that and everything, and so maybe Bin will be kind of the piece of the puzzle that they need to move up the table a little bit. Bin is going from playing with Wei on Royal Never Give Up to now playing with Wei on Billy Gaming as his mid laner. As jungler. So left Wei, the jungler, with RNG to go for Wei over on Billy Gaming, but yeah, I thought that was
just making fun of their name as analysis.
No, not making fun. Just it's funny. Just the fact that he went from a team with the jungler having a name, and then he goes to a team with the jungler having just double that name.
Well, there was a period. I don't know if you remember. I think it was Wei Zhao, and Xiaohu. They were all playing at the same time in different regions, and I'm pretty sure Zhao and Wei Zhao were both like Chinese national players. Wei Zhao, the famous 80 carry player. I forget who he played for. Was he a Najin player? I don't think so. Either way, all sorts of yeah, I'll say it, funny name scenarios like that, where like they often sound very similar to each other.
Yeah, Wei Zhao played for WE.
WE, gotcha, the World Elite, 8-star 80 carry, that's right.
So, but yeah,
funny is not the right word. I should say confusing for casters. That's the right thing. It's not funny at all. They're just names. Confusing for casters.
Yeah, well, and I just in like kind of ironic, I think, also that they have such similar names for the players that from one team to the next and everything. So
Maybe he chose based on jungler name recognition. He was like, that'll be easy. I won't
yeah,
have to change anything.
I can keep saying the same thing.
Wait, 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 wait. Wait, come. Wait, come here. Wait, get over here. Wait, come.
Yep, gank my lane.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was one of the big changes, which was just surprising from RNG on my side because they did just win MSI. It's very, or I think it's less common to see that mid-season. Like, I understand it when you get to the end of the season and the team who wins Worlds all of a sudden any of their players that are going to become free agents and everything have all of these opportunities opening up with different, more money and bigger contracts and exciting opportunities and everything. But that's at the end of the season when there's this entire off season to adjust. Like RNG just finished at MSI, 2 weeks ago? And now they are going to, between then and the first match of their summer split, is not very much time to kind of get themselves practiced and ready to roll. They fortunately don't play until week 2 of the LPL summer split, but
Gotcha.
what is that, 4 weeks, a month of practice together with your new top laner, if that happened immediately after MSI and everything.
Right.
That's not a lot of time and preparation to have your team. I mean, hey, maybe they knew this was going to be a move after MSI, and maybe Breathe had been with the team there in Beijing while they were playing from home for MSI and everything. I don't know, but it's just it's an intriguing move because there's a lot less time to get yourself coordinated as a team, which is so important, especially in the LPL, where being able to position properly and team fight well and everything, and play that team game to snowball and get those quick wins. That's super important.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious if they may not think the top lane meta changes very much if they're going to go for a role swap like that or a roster swap like that. They may be banking on him being able to play or them being able to play the same type of style and just have him kind of plug and play. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see moving into it. The fact that they get a bye to the second week, maybe they'll supplement that with more scrim time or whatever. We'll see if it's like actually a blessing or a curse, where maybe they'll have wanted some more game time or whatever. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's just definitely an interesting roster swap.
Yeah, and I know there are a couple other roster changes that you wanted to mention, so I don't know if you want to start with anything in particular.
For LPL, no, not really.
Or
The
just
only
for any region.
Gotcha. Yeah, I wanted to talk about for the LCK. I wanted to talk about Nuguri going to Damwon. I think that's pretty cool. Another, I would say, like high profile move. Obviously, Nuguri touted as one of the better top laners when he was playing and when he was at Worlds last year. I know he was the talk of the town, as it were, and yeah, just a great player, a pedigree player, and it's gonna be, I think, a boon for Damwon as an organization to get Nuguri in the top lane.
Yeah, and so seeing him come back after his time playing with FPX and then and everything, it'll be interesting to see how they perform with him back and everything. I think he is definitely an extremely talented player. I do think that the meta has shifted a little bit, but he still has a lot of those champions that were being seen at MSI, the Jace, the Camille, the Kennen, some of those. So seeing him back playing, I think it'll be fun and exciting for kind of shaking up the LCK a little bit. So especially after Damwon was like still very competitive this past year. Just everyone was kind of a tier below T1 and Genji. So so I think maybe that will be that jump that they might be able to kind of move them up a little bit to be more competitive for that top slot.
Yeah, big time. And obviously just experience means so much in those in the top teams. So yeah, I think that's going to be a great move for them. Another one that I wanted to talk about from LCK, I thought that was kind of fascinating. We see Dandy moving to the coach position for Hanwha Life Esports. I thought that was pretty sweet here.
I did not realize that, but that is.
Although, man, that was a couple months ago that they did that, though.
It's all right. Still leading into the summer split and everything. So,
Sure.
so yeah, definitely a good addition. Dandy is obviously someone who's performed at the highest level a number of or at a lot of points of his career and everything. So it'll be good to see him there for their team, and they've performed. Hanwha Life was, I think, a team that was. I mean, they like needed to do something. Like they're bottom of the table in LCK. Like I don't think they have much to lose from bringing someone on at this point, and having Dandy, I think that gives them a good shot at improving and hopefully a decent bit. Because they
Big
had, I
time.
mean, they were at Worlds, but they have a very different team now.
Very, very different. But I do think, and I guess this is a reason for bringing it up, I do think there is something important about fitting your support staff and your coaching staff with players that have like been in those high pressure scenarios, have been around the scene for a long time, and the experience goes a long way, especially in a game in an industry that doesn't have the long-standing veteran status like some other sports have. Like for example, to put it back to F1, Murray Walker, the commentator for Formula One, I believe he said he did that for 40 years. I'm pretty sure he was in Formula One for 40 years. So it's like that is a level of know-how and experience that I just don't think we have in esports yet. So it's good to get players and talents like Dandy onto your support staff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that'll be a nice addition to their team or to their coaching roles and everything.
Like
Yeah,
I said, that roster swap was a little while ago. The other interesting one, this is from North America. I was parsing through EU, and there was so much going on. There's a lot of movement there. I don't think we're going to see. I don't know what any of it means until I see a couple of games. Obviously, EU players are the ones I think I'm least familiar with. So a lot of name recognition, but not much else was coming up there. But the other move that's going to be interesting, I think, is Maple to TSM, a team that struggled big time. And this feels like a little bit of let's get some veteran status here. We'll see how it goes. I just don't think that org is treading water even right now. So hopefully it helps them get some solid footing going into the summer split. But yeah, I just not going to bode well.
I just can't imagine that that one shift and everything with the roster is going to make that significant of a difference, unfortunately. I mean,
Yeah, neither do I.
I agree with you. It's just it is a big shot to go after someone who is a very, very good player and all, and to add him into that mid lane position where you did have someone who was pretty young and untested with Kyoto. So having Huni, Spica, and Maple in there along with Tactical as some like solid players, and then we'll see what happens with their support role. I do think it definitely improves the team as a whole.
Big time.
Just whether or not it moves them from ninth place up into like the top 6 for a playoff spot is kind of questionable, because that bottom 4 was all very competitive. It's not like TSM was 2-16 or something. They were
Right.
5-13. Immortals was 5-13. CLG was 6-12. Dignitas was 8-10. Like, and even into that bottom 3 of the top 6, like TSM was only 4 games out at the end of the regular season from being in the playoffs, which is, I mean, over an 18 game season is not a huge margin. So
Sure, and from that perspective, yeah, it's not like that dire of a scenario, but just coming from, it's very similar to the like looking at Mercedes problem where like here's this team that just won, and then like whoa, they're barely competing with the bottom of the table teams. It's pretty confusing, but now that you name off that roster, it does sound like there's a little more staying power there, a little more like just hands in general. I know Maple has kind of been on the stage with some of the best mid laners that the game has seen, so maybe that'll count for something. But yeah, overall, I don't think it like bumps them up, 2 full positions in the standings or whatever.
yeah, I don't know if it does quite that much, but you never know, and I think that they have a lot of potential there, but at the same time, like another big part of that is which Huni do you get? Like
Sure.
Huni has had many different forms. He's had perfect split, like Fnatic form, and he's had
Hmm.
phenomenal Immortals form, and then he's had like these slumps with 100 Thieves, then going and becoming a world champion with T1. He is so up and down
Hmm.
with his performances, and the inconsistency over time, even though this meta I think suits his general play style and champion pool pretty well, that could shift and all of a sudden not be the case.
Right.
And so that roster I think has a lot of potential. I think it will be difficult for them to meet that potential though.
Yeah, agreed. I didn't see any other notable North American swaps
The
that.
only one would be with which we've already briefly mentioned, but C9 moving Fudge back to the top lane, releasing Summit, bringing Jensen into the mid lane role. So their roster will be Fudge top, Blabber jungle, Jensen mid, Berserker, AD carry or bot lane, and then they are bringing in Sven as their support.
Honestly, that is one of the more interesting things that I think you can do with an AD carry player is throw them to the support position. I I believe we have data of this. I can't remember who did it,
Core JJ.
but yes.
Core
And
JJ with his on Dignitas with Kiwi Kids
yes.
support. And then he
Yes.
goes to Samsung and wins a world championship, and then comes on back to NA, baby.
Well, and this is what I'm getting at. I think there's something really strong about taking the knowledge of what you need as an AD carry player, knowing that like inside and out, Sven being a solid player throughout most of his career, he's going to know these matchups inside and out, and then you can bring that sort of game IQ, that game knowledge to a position where now you just have to help facilitate that. I think that gives you an understanding of the lane that is unprecedented, unless you talk about someone like Core JJ, who has, since that role swap, some people would argue have transcended the role of support and just make it look so fucking easy sometimes.
Well, I mean, support is easy, bro. You
Is.
just hit them with this, and then you hit them with the E, and then you lock them up. And Aframu is another player who did that. He did the swap he was an 80 carry, and he did that swap to support much earlier on in League of Legends history. But he has been a successful support for and a long time perennial figure in the LCS since that. Yeah. So, I mean,
I think that's going to be a strong move.
I think so too. It's just going to be interesting with Jensen not having played this past split, with Fudge having played in the mid lane and shifting back to the top lane. Granted, not making MSI and bringing Jensen back in and everything gave them a good amount of time to get practice in. They've been over in Korea practicing and getting time in boot camping and whatnot. So I think that they'll be in decent form, but it is really where do those players kind of come back to those positions and everything. It was a similar question that we had with Bjergsen before the start of the spring split, or the spring split with LCS. Like, we didn't know if he was going to come back as the same Bjergsen that had gone to the coaching role and everything. And so it's a curious thing, and it'll be exciting to kind of see what happens there and how TSM, how C9, and all of the other rosters kind of play leading into this summer split, which does start in 2 weeks. So not this weekend, but the following. So not too far in the horizon.
And I imagine the first matchup is EG versus 100 Thieves.
So first match is EG versus C9.
Gotcha. Is that who they played in the finals for spring?
It is not. Oh. So, I don't know why they're doing it that way either, because the finals was, finals was 100 Thieves EG, like you said. So.
Gotcha. I'm curious how they arrived at that schedule, and I don't even know if in the past they had done it that way. That was just.
I think they typically did.
That's what I thought too.
So okay. they play on day 2 of the first week, EG and 100 Thieves. So they'll get that matchup, but
yeah, some more sick best of 1 action coming from North America, baby.
Coming to your screen soon.
Fucking put it in your eyes, dude.
But that's about all I've got for League of Legends talk. We'll definitely have more this coming week after the LPL season starts, and we just see those initial 3 series kind of happen and how those shake out
for sure.
to kick things off. But I know we've got some Magic talk. I know you talked a little bit about you and Sarah playing some 60 card. But let's hear about some Commander games that you had this week as well.
Yeah, on Monday we got three Commander9 games in, so it was super sweet. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but the main thing I want to talk about is a little more about the 60 card and another deck that I've been working on. So on Monday, it was myself, Jason, Ian, and Brett playing some Commander. Jason took game 1. So in the forever arms race of these Commander decks, he had invested in a couple pretty good haymaker type cards, like game enders, for his Phylath. I forget what the guy's name is. Phylath, When he enters the battlefield, you make a bunch of 0/1 plans equal to the amount of lands you control. And then he has a landfall ability that says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put 4 +1/+1 counters on target plant. So the idea is get a bunch of lands into play, cast Phylath, get a bunch of plants, and then grow those plants by playing more lands. He nuked us out on turn 6 with a massive Craterhoof Behemoth. He killed Brett and Ian just in like one swing, and then I, drew a land and passed back to him, and then died very quickly. So GG's to Jason there, and then in games 2 and 3, and this is why I talk about that, is because in games 2 and 3, I'm pretty sure I won because Jason misplayed a couple of times and like didn't make the optimal play, and we're not like. Maybe there's a community that believes in collaborative gameplay, but like we don't help each other at all. Like if we see an optimal play and they don't, we'll be like giving eyes to each other like this dumb fucker, he doesn't see it.
You're playing. You guys are playing to win, and it's like,
right.
And it's that happens sometimes.
Exactly. So it was pretty cool to get a win that way. I played 2 different decks. I played Arcades in games 1 and 2, got the win in game 2, and I played Thraxamundar in game 3. I want to talk a little bit about the Thraxamundar deck because it is kind of fun and definitely on the more like flavorful side. It is blue, black, red. It's got a bunch of zombies, and it's got a bunch of the War of the Spark amass cards in it. So the flavor for War of the Spark was Nicol Bolas bringing this army of these eternal zombies to the fucking world, and it's mine now. So the amass mechanic, every time you would amass, you would make this zombie token like bigger and bigger and bigger. The idea of like getting this big army of zombies. So it's a bunch of Nicol Bolas themed cards, a bunch of like zombie themed cards. So it's super Vorthosy, super flavorful. It's not like the best thing ever, but it's got a bunch of zombie tribal stuff, and it's just fun. So it was cool to get a win with that deck. But yeah, just good games overall. Love Commander 9, but what I really want to talk about this week is the order that I put in for cards. Now, it's something that I don't usually do, but because me and Sarah have been playing the 60 card decks, I was like, I would make a little bit of a purchase to smooth some of these lists out, where I purchased 2 copies of Arclight Phoenix for a blue-red deck that she really likes to play. Fill out the playset, make sure there's 4 of them in there. And then I also got a bunch of pieces for a mono-red Tron list. And now you're saying, but Justin, what does Tron mean? And Aaron, I'll tell you.
Tell me.
Tron is the act of assembling your 3 Urza lands. So there's the Urza's Tower, Urza's Power Plant, and Urza's Mine. Individually, they only tap for 1 colorless mana. But together, they form the Tron lands, and they tap for 7 mana total. That's a lot of colorless mana. So the whole deck's idea is to get all 3 Tron lands onto the battlefield, tap for 7, and cast something big.
Okay, but so I'm sure you have some tutors and things like that in the deck as well to kind of find those lands and all.
Expedition map. 1 colorless, and then 2 to crack it to go search for a land, put it into your hand. So the act of assembling Tron is usually very easy. It's like having the things to cast with it. So I got a couple of those in the order, a couple of the like really low end pieces to help fix your mana and whatever. But I'm super stoked about those purchases because they're like really just gonna like complete these decks, which is gonna be amazing. And then I want to go back to, we had been talking about Loro and the swaps that friend of the show Buddha Spoon had helped me with. Finally, along with these cards, put those cards in the order, and I am just like through the roof. I feel like my Magic collection is complete now, and all is good in the world.
Nice. Until the next thing comes out, and you got to find some fun new things. But
I will say on that note, that's like kind of what I'm getting at is like my singles binder is empty. It's just lands. I don't have any, like, other than the cards that I'll be pulling out of Aloro. I already know where most of them are going. So I don't have this, like, endless list of swaps in my head. I actually feel like I'm at a point now where the next couple of, like, Magic-related purchases are kind of planned out, and I don't have these, like, wild ideas rummaging in my head of, like, oh, I have that card and this other card. Now I need to build around these cards. All
That's
right,
fair.
$100 later, I have built around these cards. It's nothing like that. So like,
Yeah.
I'm very happy because where
Okay.
previously like it was that 100% where I would find a card in my collection and just be like, oh, well, I have to, right?
Yeah.
And then whatever. So yeah, we're growing up, dude. We're really growing up.
No, that's cool though that you're finding other ways to get Sarah more involved as well. Though I think that's cool because I know you guys have played together at different times in the past, and I think that's a cool way to do it. Like you mentioned before, to kind of just have some fun. It's not as like super competitive or
Right.
potentially one-sided as 1v1 commander can be, where if someone like you have no help if the other person gets their stuff first and you can't fight it, then you just kind of lose like quickly
And
or
in not like a
slowly.
fun way. Yeah,
like you just
it's not
don't get
that
to
cool.
play the game super much.
Right.
And so yeah, being able to find a different format that you guys can enjoy a bit more together, that's very cool.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And I'm super looking forward to the 2 copies of Arclight Phoenix. That'll be the closest, that and the Tron deck are the closest that I have to something that would like show up at a local game store.
Nice.
So I'm like pleased about those. But yeah, overall, just happy that we've kind of been able to connect a little bit in a way that is like way more just banal and like not really competitive at all. It's just kind of something to fill the time and talk over or whatever. So that's been pretty cool. But yeah, that's kind of all I really wanted to say about Magic for this week. But if you want to give me your flavor of the week, we can get these people out of here.
Sounds good. So for my flavor of the week, for my food, Colleen and I had purchased some green curry sauce at Trader Joe's, and so I made it into a nice like green curry chicken recipe with some jasmine rice. I used a lot of cumin in my seasoning for the chicken and everything before grilling that all up, and so that turned out really well. So that was a tasty treat. For my music, with my week being a little bit kind of rougher, I defaulted back to some like older music on an older playlist I had made on Spotify that just has a lot of songs that I can sing along to without like having to turn my brain on. I can just shut it off and let the lyrics kind of go while I'm driving. And so it's a playlist of soundtracks from songs that were used on the soundtracks of a number of video games I played when I was a kid. So from NBA Live 2005, MVP Baseball 2005, NHL 06, and Madden 06. All of those games had some banging soundtracks, from All American Rejects to Foo Fighters to just a lot of these really good bands that have some fun songs. And so Billy Talent, Red Flag was on there, which we've mentioned
classic.
before. So
Yep.
nice little callback, but some solid music, and it was a nice way for me to kind of unwind, like kind of just sing some songs and turn my brain off and everything. And then for my visual medium for this past week, I decided to go with, I had an old man moment, which like it occurred to me, and I think it's kind of funny, but I was watching the IndyCar Detroit Grand Prix Sunday afternoon on the couch, just watching along, having a blast, and I passed out like with, I don't know, 10 laps to go in the race or something like that. And I woke up to like cars circling the track on their like post like finish laps and then interviews and everything. I'm like, wait, what happened?
Dude, missing the end.
So I mean, it was just kind of funny because I remember when I was growing up, I would a lot of times watch golf on Sundays with my dad because he loves golf, and we would just like hang out and watch it, and he would always just pass out like mid afternoon on a Sunday with the TV still going and everything, and I just did the same exact thing. So I felt like I had a little bit of an old man moment there. But otherwise, the Detroit Grand Prix was it was a fun one to watch.
There you go.
Up until that point, it was I was enjoying it. So that is my flavor of the week. But Justin, what have you got for the people?
So I'll start with my visual medium here. A little bit different. So on YouTube, I was recommended a video from a guy. I'm pretty sure. I'm gonna shout him out because it was awesome. I'm pretty sure the channel name is Exclusion, and he does videos on like DayZ and Rust. Maybe I don't know a lot about him, but the video that I watched, it was 25,000 or what 25,000 hours of DayZ looks like. I'm pretty sure it was like an hour and 40-minute long video of him putting this team together, the setup, the plan, the idea, and then all of the things that happened in the server. And the production value of the video, the storytelling, the narration, the actual what happened on the server, it was very intense. To the degree that towards the end of it, when it was all like coming together, the final sequence that he does, it's like the turn of a movie. He really, really goes to this level where once you get to the end and he's laying things out, he asks the question of the audience and then throws the sequence you just watched. He throws it in reverse in a way that's like, oh shit, he's going to show us something else. And like, there is a movie level twist at the end of this DayZ server. It's a fucking video game. My man made the most compelling thing I've seen in a long time, just with 3 other guys, a Discord server, and some like film players. It was amazing. If you have the time, go check it out. What 25,000 hours of DayZ looks like. It was... I've never seen anything like it, I'll just say that.
Which is 1,042 days.
That's a long time.
It's a lot.
It was the cumulative amount of 4 different players.
Still, that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, and it showed. The level to which they played the game, it was like, whoa.
Very cool.
Yeah, very, very cool. So check that out. That's my visual media. My food and my music go together. So this weekend, me and Sarah were at her parents'. Shout out to Tim. He made some great crabs. And it's just a couple hour affair, just picking apart dead things and eating the meat that's inside. It's amazing. But then the next day, on Sunday, we spent about an hour and 20 minutes or so. We listened to Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. It was the first time her listening to it, and it was the first time me listening to it like with somebody. So it was a different listen through, like to see her reaction. And by this point, I've listened to it a bunch, so I know some of the lyrics as well. So that was very fun, picking through crabs and listening to Kendrick Lamar. So that is my music and my food combined, because we were picking the crabs, so she could turn it into a corn chowder that was amazing.
Sounds so good.
Yeah, it was great. But that's my flavor of the week here for this week.
Awesome. Well, that does bring us again to the end of our episode, wrapping things up here. Of course, find us on Spotify, check us out on Google Podcasts, check us out on YouTube, hit us up on Twitter, let us know what your flavor of the week is. As always, thank you all for listening. We really, really appreciate everyone who takes some time to join us for these podcasts and all. We love to do it. So that is all I have.
Yeah, just want to follow up on Aaron and say thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you very much for taking your time. If you want to get involved, come and join the Discord. Links are in the link tree below. New episodes every Thursday. Tell us what you think on Twitter. What was your flavor of the week? What is your rose, thorn, and seed? Thank you, everyone, for listening. This is another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out.
Later.